My father always said I would carry forward his legacy. Those words were my anchor, my motivation. I trusted him completely, and I never doubted that he would protect me, no matter what. But after his sudden passing, everything changed. My stepmother and her daughter didn't grieve, they schemed. They bribed the lawyer, manipulated the documents, and erased me from my father's will. In a single stroke, they tried to make me vanish from my own life, my own family, my own inheritance. I discovered it by accident, when I asked for a copy of the will. The lawyer's nervous hesitation, the subtle misdirection, and finally the envelope that contained the altered document, it all hit me at once. My name was gone. My share was gone. My future, carefully envisioned by my father, had been stolen. I felt rage, disbelief, and betrayal in equal measure. How could the people who were supposed to love me, protect me, betray me so completely? I wanted to confront them immediately, but I realized that anger alone would get me nowhere. I had to be strategic. I had to be smarter. My father had always taught me to trust my instincts, to seek the truth, and to defend what was rightfully mine. And that's exactly what I intended to do. That's when my fiancé stepped in. Calm, calculating, and fiercely loyal, he didn't let me act on raw emotion. He reminded me that evidence was everything, that a misstep could let them get away with it. Together, we began piecing together every fragment of the truth. Emails, messages, bank transfers, witness accounts, we traced everything. The more we dug, the clearer it became that their greed had blinded them. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated us. I discovered patterns of bribery, intentional misfilings, and financial manipulations that pointed directly to their conspiracy. The lawyer who had altered the will had left subtle traces, enough for someone meticulous to detect. Every transaction, every note, every phone call became a thread I could pull. And pull I did. My fiancé guided me through the legal intricacies, showing me where loopholes could be leveraged, where evidence could be presented in court, and how to anticipate their lies. I realized something powerful. They were confident because they thought I was powerless, replaceable. That arrogance would be their downfall. I began preparing for court. Each day was a test of nerves, patience, and intellect. My stepmother tried to portray me as entitled, aggressive, and unreasonable. Her daughter played the naive victim. But their performance was shallow. It didn't withstand the weight of facts, documents, and witnesses who remembered my father's intentions clearly. Every lie they told only strengthened the pattern of deceit we had uncovered. One pivotal moment came when I found a series of emails between the lawyer and my stepmother. They discussed payments, methods of concealment, and ways to manipulate the will. My hands shook when I read them, but I knew this was the proof I needed. This wasn't just about money, this was about restoring my father's trust, his vision, and the integrity he had instilled in me. I also uncovered handwritten notes from my father, hidden in personal files, indicating specific instructions for my inheritance. He had foreseen potential manipulation and had left subtle clues, thinking one day I might need them. Those notes became my guide, my roadmap to reclaiming what was mine. Court day arrived, and I faced them for the first time. My stepmother's smug expression, her daughter's false innocence, and the lawyer's nervousness, they all thought they had won. I presented the evidence systematically, emails, documents, notes, and witness testimony. The strategy was simple: show the pattern of fraud, the intent, and the manipulation. The court listened. Every lie unraveled under scrutiny. Every fabricated story collapsed when faced with concrete proof. My father's legacy, which they tried to erase, could not be destroyed. My fiancé's calm support gave me the strength to present every detail with clarity, precision, and professionalism. By the end of the day, it was clear who had acted dishonestly. My stepmother and her daughter's attempt to erase me had failed spectacularly. The will was restored, my inheritance returned, and the legal system recognized the integrity of my claim. They hadn't just lost a battle, they had revealed their greed and deception for all to see. Through this, I realized the power of preparation, patience, and precision. I also understood that love and loyalty are not just emotional, they are strategic. My fiancé's unwavering support, combined with my determination and my father's foresight, created a force they could not overcome. This was only the beginning. The betrayal had been personal, but it had also been a lesson in resilience, intelligence, and strategy. I had been underestimated, dismissed, and erased, but I had emerged stronger, sharper, and more determined than ever. Even as the court ruling came down in my favor, I knew the fight for respect, recognition, and true justice was ongoing. But for the first time, I felt the balance shift. My father's vision, my inheritance, and my rightful place were mine again, and no one could take that away. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about proving that truth, courage, and loyalty can overcome manipulation, betrayal, and greed. And sometimes, the very attempt to erase you becomes the key to showing the world who you truly are. The court ruling had restored my father's legacy, but the victory was not just legal, it was personal. Every document I held, every testimony I presented, every strategic move my fiancé and I had executed proved that I was not replaceable. Yet, the battle for respect and recognition in my own family wasn't over. My stepmother and her daughter had been humiliated, but they were still dangerous, still calculating, and still determined to control what they thought they had earned. I knew I had to act with precision. No more emotions clouding judgment. I couldn't afford to give them any leverage, any chance to manipulate, any opportunity to undermine me again. I began reviewing every aspect of my father's estate, the businesses he had built, and the investments he had nurtured over decades. Everything had a pattern, a logic, a structure. And I, now fully aware of their deceit, could navigate it with clarity they never imagined I would possess. My fiancé became my anchor and my strategist. Together, we identified the weak points in their approach, the hidden clauses, the legal oversights, the mismanaged accounts that had gone unnoticed because my stepmother and her daughter believed they were untouchable. They had assumed they could erase me and move forward unchallenged. Their arrogance blinded them to the fact that someone with dedication, intelligence, and rightful claim was now fully aware of every misstep they had taken. The first step was consolidating my father's businesses and investments. I moved swiftly, quietly, and strategically. I ensured that all assets were properly accounted for, all legal protections were in place, and all potential vulnerabilities were covered. It wasn't enough to reclaim what had been stolen, I needed to strengthen it, make it untouchable, and ensure no one could ever manipulate it again. Meanwhile, my stepmother tried to rebuild her image, presenting herself as the victim, the caretaker, the executor of my father's legacy. Her daughter echoed her every word, attempting to sway distant relatives and friends, hoping to gain sympathy. But the truth was undeniable. Every lie, every scheme, every manipulation they had attempted was now on record. And I had positioned myself as the one who understood the full scope of my father's intentions, someone who could not be intimidated or erased again. I also focused on my personal growth, understanding that this battle was as much about proving my worth as it was about reclaiming inheritance. At 20, I was young, but I carried the wisdom of years spent observing my father, learning from him, and understanding the value of diligence, strategy, and patience. I embraced this responsibility fully, recognizing that leadership wasn't given, it was earned through action, integrity, and courage. Then came the subtle yet crucial phase, observing their next moves. They were reckless now, desperate to salvage their reputation and regain some control. I watched every conversation, every social interaction, every legal maneuver. With my fiancé's guidance, we anticipated their tactics, prepared countermeasures, and ensured that every step they took could be neutralized. They didn't know that I had become a step ahead, that I could predict their actions based on their greed and fear. I realized, more clearly than ever, that betrayal is never just personal, it is strategic. My stepmother and her daughter had tried to erase me, believing they could outmaneuver a young woman. But in their attempt, they revealed their weaknesses: impatience, arrogance, and underestimation. I turned those weaknesses into weapons, leveraging every misstep, every miscalculation, every overreach to my advantage. Communication with my fiancé became a battlefield in itself. We coordinated our moves with precision, deciding when to confront, when to gather evidence, when to remain silent. Every conversation, every plan, every action was measured and deliberate. Love and loyalty weren't just emotional, they were tactical. I realized that my strength wasn't just in legal evidence or strategy, it was in the bond we had formed, a partnership built on trust, intellect, and shared purpose. Weeks passed, and the pressure on my stepmother intensified. She tried to intimidate me, sending messages filled with threats and veiled warnings. Her daughter echoed them, attempting to provoke fear or hesitation. But I remained calm. Every threat only reinforced my resolve. I had learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it is acting despite fear, with clarity, focus, and precision. One pivotal moment came when I discovered a series of financial discrepancies they had made while trying to secure assets illegally. Their calculations were sloppy, leaving a paper trail they never intended to create. I seized this opportunity immediately, documenting every detail, cross-referencing every transaction, and preparing it for legal reinforcement. My stepmother had thought she was clever, I proved she was reckless. In parallel, I strengthened my relationships with the people who had been loyal to my father. Former colleagues, business partners, and legal advisors, all of whom had respected his vision, became allies. They recognized my integrity, my commitment, and my rightful role. The more they supported me, the less influence my stepmother and her daughter could wield. Their power was crumbling, and I was systematically ensuring that their influence would never recover. Throughout this process, I often reflected on my father's words. He had always said that the true measure of someone's strength was not just how they reacted to success, but how they handled betrayal and adversity. I realized he had prepared me for this moment in ways I hadn't fully appreciated until now. Every lesson, every story, every principle he shared became a tool in my hands. As part 2 closes, the situation is clear: my stepmother and her daughter are cornered, desperate, and exposed. I have reclaimed the trust, legacy, and influence that were mine by right. I have demonstrated that youth is not weakness, that strategy trumps deception, and that integrity combined with intelligence is unstoppable. The court victory was only the beginning. The full restoration of my father's legacy and my rightful place within it was now unfolding, step by step, with precision and power. The next phase of this battle is not revenge for the sake of anger, it is the meticulous dismantling of the power they tried to claim, and the secure establishment of my rightful inheritance and authority. Every move I make now is calculated, deliberate, and unstoppable. What they thought they could erase, they have only magnified. By now, it was clear that my stepmother and her daughter were panicking. Their arrogance, once so loud and confident, had become desperation. Every call they made, every maneuver they attempted, betrayed fear. But fear alone wasn't enough. I had to turn it into opportunity. With every misstep they took, I consolidated more control over my father's legacy, more authority over the businesses, and more clarity about the depth of their deception. I began documenting every interaction. Every email, every hidden message, every attempt to manipulate accounts or mislead lawyers went into a meticulously organized file. My fiancé and I treated it like a puzzle, each piece revealing not just their greed, but the predictable patterns in their behavior. They thought they were clever, but cleverness without caution is recklessness, and their recklessness was now my advantage. Their first major mistake came when they attempted to sell a portion of my father's assets without proper authorization. They assumed, because I was young, I wouldn't notice. But I did. I intercepted the transaction, flagged it legally, and reversed it before any damage could occur. It wasn't just a victory, it was a signal. They realized I was fully capable, fully prepared, and fully untouchable in areas they thought they controlled. From that moment, I started tightening every corner of my father's estate. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, business operations, every single area had to be secure. I worked with auditors, legal experts, and trusted allies who had worked with my father. Their loyalty was unwavering because they had witnessed my father's values, and they now saw them reflected in me. With every secured asset, every corrected transaction, I was rewriting the rules of this battle. They had tried to erase me, but instead, they were teaching me how to rebuild stronger. My stepmother and her daughter, frustrated by their inability to manipulate anything, became sloppy. They sent veiled threats, tried to intimidate witnesses, and attempted to create false narratives about me. But the strategy was always the same: anticipate, document, act decisively. I didn't confront them emotionally, I dismantled their moves methodically. Their power had been built on deception, and I was systematically exposing every layer. One day, a key witness came forward. They had seen my stepmother and her daughter coercing the lawyer, pressuring staff, and attempting to cover up critical details. Their testimony was precise, factual, and damning. It wasn't just an emotional vindication, it was strategic leverage. The more allies and witnesses I had, the more unassailable my position became. I realized that truth, when documented and presented with clarity, becomes unstoppable. During this period, my fiancé remained my anchor. Calm and composed, he helped me structure evidence, anticipate counterclaims, and maintain focus. Without his guidance, I might have reacted emotionally, allowed frustration to cloud judgment, or made mistakes. Together, we formed a force that was not just reactive, but proactive, predicting their next moves before they even attempted them. Then came a breakthrough moment. While reviewing financial records, I discovered a hidden clause my father had included in his business agreements. A clause my stepmother had overlooked, assuming it would be irrelevant. It was subtle, almost invisible, but its implications were massive. It gave me authority over decisions she thought she controlled. She had tried to claim power through manipulation, but my father's foresight had handed me a legal lever to take control. I didn't waste time. Using that clause, I began asserting authority over key business operations. Every decision, every approval, every transaction passed through me. My stepmother and her daughter protested, but legally, I was untouchable. The court ruling had restored my inheritance, and now my father's operational vision was under my guidance. Their attempts to undermine me were irrelevant, they had no legal or strategic standing. As weeks passed, their panic grew. They made mistakes fueled by desperation, attempting to interfere with contracts, mismanaging accounts, and creating inconsistencies that only strengthened my position. Every error they made was documented, every threat countered, and every move turned into a lesson in precision. Their arrogance, once their strength, had become their undoing. I also recognized that this battle wasn't just about money or assets, it was about respect, identity, and legacy. They had tried to erase me, to strip me of my role in my father's life and work. But I was young, intelligent, and determined. I wasn't just reclaiming inheritance, I was claiming my rightful place as my father's successor, the one who would carry forward his vision and values. My stepmother attempted to manipulate public perception, spreading rumors, and creating false narratives about my capability, my age, and my experience. But these efforts failed. Friends, family, and business associates recognized the truth: I was competent, informed, and decisive. Every attempt to smear me backfired, revealing only their desperation and incompetence. I also strengthened my personal strategy. Every meeting, every negotiation, every decision was calculated. I kept emotions controlled, focusing on results and outcomes. I realized that in battles like this, emotional reactions could be exploited. Calm, measured, and strategic action became my hallmark, and every ally I worked with saw the clarity and precision in my leadership. One crucial turning point came when I presented a consolidated report of all mismanaged assets, improper attempts at manipulation, and legal missteps by my stepmother and her daughter to the court. It was thorough, professional, and undeniable. The court saw patterns of behavior, the scope of deception, and the predictable recklessness that had marked their entire campaign. Their credibility collapsed, and my authority was reinforced. Throughout this, I reflected constantly on my father's vision. He had trusted me, believed in my capability, and prepared me, knowingly or unknowingly, for moments like this. Every lesson he had imparted, the importance of diligence, observation, patience, and strategy, was now a tool in my hands. I realized that betrayal could be turned into preparation, and attempts to erase me became lessons in foresight and precision. As Part 3 closes, my position is unshakable. My father's legacy is not just restored, it is secured. My stepmother and her daughter are cornered, exposed, and powerless. Every move they make now only highlights their desperation and reinforces my authority. The court victories, the strategic maneuvers, and the precision of my actions have transformed what could have been a story of loss into a story of triumph, strategy, and vindication. What they tried to destroy, the rightful inheritance, my identity, my place in the family, is now fully restored. And this is only the beginning. Every move forward will be deliberate, every action precise, and every decision calculated to ensure that their attempts to manipulate, intimidate, or control are permanently neutralized. By now, everything was falling into place. My stepmother and her daughter were cornered. Their schemes, their arrogance, and their reckless attempts to manipulate my father's legacy had been exposed at every level. They had underestimated me, dismissed my intelligence, and assumed youth was weakness. They were wrong. Every move I had made had strengthened my position, and every error they had committed had become a stepping stone to complete victory. With my fiancé by my side, I launched the final phase of reclaiming not just my inheritance, but the respect, control, and authority my father had always intended for me. The assets, once scattered and vulnerable, were now consolidated under my guidance. Every business decision, every investment, every legal maneuver passed through me. The hidden clause my father had left in his contracts gave me the ultimate leverage, a tool they had never anticipated, a key to asserting my rightful control. They tried one last time to challenge me, filing claims, spreading rumors, and attempting to manipulate legal loopholes. But it was too late. I had documented everything, the bribery, the manipulation, the threats, the mismanagement. I had witnesses, evidence, and the law firmly on my side. Their credibility had crumbled completely. In court, every lie they presented was dismantled with precision, every fabricated story unraveled by facts and records meticulously gathered over months. I realized, in that moment, how much strength comes from strategy, patience, and clarity of purpose. Anger could have destroyed me, rash decisions could have cost me everything. But focus, intelligence, and foresight had allowed me to turn betrayal into empowerment. My stepmother and her daughter had tried to erase me, but instead, they had revealed their weakness, which became my advantage. The final court ruling was decisive. My inheritance, my father's businesses, and his legacy were restored fully to me. Beyond the financial aspect, the court recognized the malicious intent, the pattern of deception, and the deliberate attempts to undermine my rightful place. The victory was absolute, undeniable, and irreversible. They could no longer manipulate, intimidate, or challenge me. The authority, trust, and control that my father had intended for me were now firmly in my hands. But the story wasn't just about legal victory, it was about reclaiming identity, dignity, and power. My father had believed in me, and I had fulfilled that trust. The people who had tried to erase me were not just exposed, they were powerless, irrelevant, and publicly diminished. Their influence over my life, my family, and my inheritance had ended. I had transformed betrayal into triumph, weakness into strength, and despair into empowerment. In the aftermath, I took deliberate steps to protect the future. I secured every asset, formalized every agreement, and built alliances with trusted advisors who shared my father's vision. I ensured that no loophole could ever be exploited again. Every decision was calculated, every action reinforced by strategy, and every move secured by foresight. The mistakes of the past became lessons for the future. My fiancé's role was pivotal throughout. His guidance, calm analysis, and unwavering support had made the difference between reactive struggle and proactive triumph. Love, in this story, was not passive, it was tactical, strategic, and a source of unshakable strength. Together, we had faced betrayal, deception, and manipulation, and emerged victorious. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal I experienced was a test, a trial that revealed not just the weakness of those who tried to harm me, but the depth of my own resilience. At 20, I had not only reclaimed my father's legacy but had become a force capable of defending it, growing it, and ensuring that no one could ever challenge my rightful place again. Even as the court ruling was finalized, my stepmother and her daughter attempted subtle threats and empty gestures, hoping to provoke fear or hesitation. But they had lost. Every tactic they used now highlighted their desperation. Every move was countered, every claim neutralized, every attempt at manipulation blocked. They were shadows of the power they had once imagined they possessed. I also took steps to publicly assert my authority. I met with business partners, advisors, and associates who had previously been hesitant or uncertain. I demonstrated competence, decisiveness, and strategic thinking that left no doubt about my capability. The legacy my father had envisioned, his businesses, investments, and influence, was now actively guided by someone who truly understood its value and purpose. In private moments, I reflected on the lessons I had learned. Betrayal sharpens the mind, adversity strengthens resolve, and strategy turns vulnerability into power. My father's foresight, the unwavering support of my fiancé, and my determination had created a synergy that ensured victory. What they thought they could erase became the very proof of their failure. Finally, I addressed the personal aspect. This was not just a story of inheritance, it was about reclaiming my identity, my dignity, and my rightful place in a family and legacy that had tried to reject me. I emerged not only victorious but transformed, more confident, more capable, and fully in control. Every past slight, every betrayal, every underestimation had fueled my rise. My stepmother and her daughter were left with nothing. No authority, no credibility, no access to what had never been theirs. They had tried to erase me, but in doing so, they amplified my strength, my intelligence, and my rightful claim. Their arrogance became their downfall, and their attempts at control became the very evidence of their deceit. As I moved forward, I realized the final lesson: power and legacy are not given, they are claimed. Justice is not always swift, but when combined with patience, strategy, and clarity, it is unstoppable. At 20, I had learned this truth, and I had applied it with precision, determination, and unwavering focus. My father's vision, my inheritance, and my place in the family were secure. The final outcome was complete. My father's legacy was intact, my inheritance restored, my authority undisputed. My stepmother and her daughter had been exposed, defeated, and permanently sidelined. The bonds of trust, strategy, and love that guided me through this ordeal had proven stronger than greed, deceit, and manipulation. This is the story of a young woman who was almost erased, who faced betrayal from those closest to her, and who emerged victorious, not just legally, but personally, strategically, and emotionally. What they thought they could destroy became the catalyst for a rise stronger than they could imagine. My father's trust was honored, my rightful place reclaimed, and the legacy preserved for generations to come. In the end, the lesson was clear: even when betrayal comes from the closest quarters, truth, strategy, and courage will prevail. Every attempt to erase me had only made me unstoppable. My father had believed in me, I had acted decisively, and together with my fiancé, I turned deceit into triumph. They tried to erase me, but instead, they created the proof of their own failure, and the evidence of my unstoppable strength. Never let betrayal or deceit hold you back. Stand strong, fight smart, and claim what's rightfully yours. Subscribe to Revenge Era and hit the bell to follow more stories of courage, justice, and unstoppable triumph.